There is something different about Airbnb horror stories. Hotels have cameras, staff, security, and decades of rules. But an Airbnb, it's just you, walking into a stranger's home, trusting everything is exactly the way it looks online. And sometimes it isn't. Tonight, I'm going to share a story that still keeps me from booking certain types of rentals. A story about a guest who realized, much too late, that the person hosting them never actually left the house. Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed and hit the like button. It helps this channel reach more people, and it lets me keep bringing you terrifying true stories every week. Now, let's get into it. I booked the cottage because it looked peaceful. One of those quiet, sun-washed Airbnb listings with flower boxes under the windows and curtains that looked hand-stitched. I'd been working myself into the ground at my job, and I just needed a weekend where I could sit outside, breathe, and remember what silence felt like. The host's name was Daniel. His profile picture showed a guy in his late 40s, smiling with a kind of overly polite stiffness. His reviews were glowing. Wonderful host. Goes above and beyond. Super attentive. At the time, that sounded like a positive. The first red flag happened before I even got out of my car. The second my tires crunched into the gravel driveway, the front door opened, fast, and Daniel stepped out like he'd been waiting right there. I wasn't even parked yet. He waved a little too eagerly. "You made great time. I've been watching for you." Watching for me? I told myself he was probably just excited, maybe lonely, and I followed him inside. The place was cute, I'll give him that. Cozy, spotless, a little old-fashioned. But the weird part was how much he hovered. He walked from room to room, inches behind me, explaining things nobody needed explained. "The fridge keeps things cold," he said at one point. No joke. Every time I turned around, he was right there. I finally asked, "Do you live nearby?" He smiled. "Oh, I stay close." The way he said it made my stomach drop. After he gave me the world's longest, strangest tour, I expected him to head out. But he didn't. He just stood in the living room with his hands clasped like he was waiting for something. "So," he said, "what's your plan tonight?" I told him I'd probably just read and relax. He nodded slowly, too slowly. "Good. Good. I like that." Then he left. Or at least, I thought he left. Around 10 that night, while brushing my teeth, I heard footsteps on the porch. Heavy ones. I froze, listening. Then the doorknob rattled. Not like a knock, like someone was trying keys. I stepped into the living room, just as the front door creaked open. It was Daniel. He didn't even look surprised to see me awake. "Oh, I thought you were asleep already?" I felt my words catch. "Why, are you coming inside?" He held up a toolbox. Routine filter checks. At 10 at night, he blinked slowly. I do them when they need to be done. Every alarm bell in my brain started screaming. I told him firmly, "You need to go. Now." His face twitched like he didn't hear me at first. Then he nodded and walked out. But before leaving, he looked around the room, scanning everything with this expression I can only describe as memorizing it. I barricaded the door after he left. At about 1:30 a.m., I woke up to the soft, unmistakable sound of footsteps inside the house. Slow ones. My heart nearly exploded. I sat up and listened, barely breathing. The steps were coming from the living room, then the hallway, then stopping right outside my bedroom door. Then, a whisper through the crack. "I told you I stay close." That was enough. I grabbed my bag, opened the window, and climbed out into the cold grass. I didn't even stop to put on shoes. I sprinted toward my car, fumbling the keys with shaking hands. When I looked back at the house, the bedroom light I had left off was now glowing. A shadow moved past the window. He was in my room. I peeled out of that driveway so fast, gravel shot behind me like shrapnel. I drove until I found a gas station with lights on and called the police. Here's the part that still chills me. When officers searched the property, they found a narrow door in the living room wall I had never noticed, leading to a tiny crawl space behind the bedroom. Inside were 3 blankets, food wrappers, and a small battery-powered lantern. Daniel had been living there, staying close. Airbnb removed his listing. But the part that keeps me up sometimes, he's never been charged, and he's still out there. I rented an Airbnb because I needed somewhere cheap and quiet while I sorted my life out. A breakup, a job I hated, a feeling that everything in my life had stalled. I just wanted a reset. The listing wasn't anything fancy. A small standalone guest house behind an older 2-story home. The pictures looked warm and safe. Lots of natural light, soft colors, plants in every corner. The kind of place that feels like it has a heartbeat. But the second I stepped inside, it felt different. Not bad, just watched. I kept telling myself I was being dramatic. I was exhausted, emotional, sensitive. But there was this subtle heaviness in the air, like walking into a room where someone else had just been. I even called out, "Hello?" when I walked in, because the silence felt too full. There was a set of keys on the counter, with a note from the host, Christine. "Welcome. Use these to lock the front door from the inside too. The deadbolt sticks." I remember the handwriting. Neat, calm, nothing alarming. I should have paid more attention to the word too. I unpacked, made food, tried to settle in, but the whole structure made noises that didn't match its size. Not normal, old house creaks. Heavier sounds, soft, dragging shuffles. A slow shift in the floorboards like weight distributing itself. Every time I turned my head, I felt like something had just stepped out of my peripheral vision. I kept checking the windows, then the bathroom, then the closet, then under the bed. Nothing, just that feeling. And then there was the door. On the far end of the living room, behind a small bookshelf, there was a narrow wooden door with an old-fashioned keyhole. Something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous, just private, like touching someone else's diary. So I avoided it. But I couldn't ignore the fact that the wood around the handle was scraped, freshly. Like someone tried to close it from the outside while something pushed from the inside. I should have left after the first night, but I kept rationalizing everything. You're tired, you're anxious, you're projecting. And then things started moving. Not huge things, Nothing dramatic, just small, precise shifts. My shoes weren't where I left them. My toothbrush was angled differently. The curtains were drawn tighter. The keys that were supposed to stay on the counter kept ending up closer and closer to the hallway. At one point, they were halfway across the floor, like something had tried to drag them away quietly. And then I found the second set. I was looking for a charger behind the couch when my fingers brushed metal. I pulled out a ring of keys. Old, heavy ones. The kind that go to doors no one uses anymore. Attached to the ring was a tiny tag. Not Christine's handwriting, someone else's. For when I come back. I can't explain the feeling that went through me. It wasn't fear exactly, more like realization. A puzzle I didn't know I was solving, suddenly fitting together. This wasn't a guest house. It was someone's space. Someone who hadn't agreed to leave. Someone who intended to return. I put the keys on the counter, grabbed my bag, and planned to go. But something stopped me. The narrow wooden door was open an inch. I know it had been closed earlier. I hadn't touched it. I don't know why I walked toward it. Curiosity, maybe, or denial. I wanted to prove to myself that there was nothing behind it. No animal, no intruder, no person, just an old pantry or storage room. When I got close, I heard breathing. Not loud, not obvious. The kind of breathing someone does when they're trying very, very hard to be quiet. Slow, careful, controlled. I froze. Every hair on my body stood up. Something shifted just beyond the crack. Not toward me, but away, like it was backing deeper into the dark. I didn't open the door. I didn't look inside. I just turned, grabbed my things, and walked out without locking a single door behind me. I drove straight to a motel and reported the listing to Airbnb. They said the account was flagged months earlier for suspicious activity, but it kept reappearing under different names. The police took a statement, but didn't find anything when they checked the property. Christine, the real one, messaged me later and said she hadn't lived in that house for almost a year. She asked if I found anything weird inside. I didn't answer her, but I keep thinking about the breathing and how quiet it was. Like something that has spent a long, long time learning not to get caught. 3 days ago, I got a strange text from an unknown number. No message, just a picture of my shoes, set neatly by a door I never opened. And behind them, barely visible in the dark, was something that looked like a hand, fingers wrapped around a wooden frame, pulling a door shut from the inside. Two summers ago, my boyfriend and I booked a small lakeside cabin for a long weekend. It looked like the perfect retreat. Blue water, tall pine trees, and a wooden deck that caught the sunset just right. The kind of place people put on postcards. But there was one strange line buried in the house rules. Do not disturb the stones around the property. We joked about it during the drive. Are we going to get cursed by a pile of rocks? Maybe they're decorative. We shrugged it off. The first day was perfect. Swimming, grilling, sitting on the deck while the sky turned orange. But that night, just after midnight, I woke up to knocking, not on the door, on the walls. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, then silence. I tried to tell myself it was just the cabin settling. Old wood makes weird sounds. But about an hour later, the knocking came again. Only this time, it came from the opposite side of the cabin, farther away, as if something had moved. My boyfriend went outside with a flashlight, circling the cabin, calling out. Nothing. No animals. No branches hitting the siding. No footprints. The next morning, while he made breakfast, I walked around the cabin to clear my head. That's when I saw them. The stones. Dozens and dozens of smooth, round river stones placed in strange circular patterns around the property. Some small, some large, some overlapping. It looked intentional, ritualistic, almost like someone had been outlining invisible boundaries. But a few of them looked wrong, freshly moved, dragged slightly out of formation, like something had pushed through them. "Did you step on these?" I called out. "No," he said. "Why?" I didn't have an answer that didn't make me sound paranoid. That night, the knocking didn't just return. It grew louder, more insistent, like something was testing the walls, moving around the cabin slowly, tapping as it went. We barely slept. On the final night, it escalated into something I still don't like thinking about. Around 3:30 a.m., every window in the cabin began to rattle violently, not from wind, not from a storm, but like hands, many hands, slapping the glass and sliding across it. The knocking became pounding. The pounding became shaking. And the shaking moved around us in a perfect circle, as if something was running its hands along the entire structure. We clutched each other, frozen, unable to move or speak. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the cabin went completely silent. And that's when we heard it. A voice, low, breathless, whispering from somewhere inside the walls, "Put them back." We grabbed what we could and ran, leaving half our belongings behind. At the gas station in town, the clerk asked casually where we had been staying. When we told him, his expression changed instantly. He looked like he wanted to tell us something he'd promised himself he wouldn't say to tourists. "That place?" he whispered. "You're lucky you left." We stared at him. He took a breath. A missing hiker was buried around that cabin years ago. Locals leave stones where they think he rests, keeps him calm. Tourists, they usually ignore the rules. "We didn't touch anything," I said quickly. He just shook his head. "You didn't have to," he said quietly. "Sometimes, just standing where he's buried is enough." We never went back for the things we left behind. And even now, years later, when I'm lying in bed half asleep, sometimes I swear I hear faint knocking somewhere in my house. 3 slow taps, always 3. And that's the story. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. These are the kinds of experiences that stay with people forever, and sharing them helps keep others safe. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. I post chilling true experiences every week, and trust me, the next one is even darker. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share, drop it in the comments. You never know. it might be the next video on this channel. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.